During our film night at house, my wife fell asleep on the sofa with her phone unlocked. Voicemails kept coming in from office project chat, "Miss your touch already," and "Last meet was amazing, can't wait to see you again the next day." We'd been together for 2 years and had just put a deposit down on a car. I put her phone down and calmly covered her with a comforter like nothing happened. Last night, my mobile had 45 increasingly desperate messages. Before I get into how everything spiraled from there, take a second to subscribe and leave a comment about where you're watching from or what time it is for you. Those small things really help these stories reach the right people. Film nights had been our ritual since early in our relationship. Every Friday, no matter how chaotic the week had been, we stayed in. One of us picked the movie, the other handled snacks, and for a few hours the outside world didn't exist. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. Natalie used to joke that she loved those nights more than any night out because they made her feel grounded. I believed her. That night felt no different at first. She chose the movie, some slow-burn drama she'd been wanting to see, and curled up on the sofa beside me. About halfway through, her breathing evened out, her head tilting slightly toward the armrest. I smiled, thinking I'd wake her gently once the movie ended. Then her phone lit up on the coffee table. Once. Twice. Again. I wasn't snooping. The screen was already on. Unlocked. The words were right there, unavoidable. At first, I assumed it was work stress, maybe a late project, a coworker panicking. Then I actually read the words. My chest tightened so fast it felt like someone had dropped a weight on it. 2 years together. Shared plans. Shared savings. Shared future. And suddenly I was standing outside my own life, looking in. I picked up the phone. I know how that sounds, but in that moment, I needed certainty more than comfort. I scrolled just enough to understand what I was seeing. It wasn't flirting. It wasn't confusion. It was deliberate. Familiar. Ongoing. References to meetings that weren't meetings. Jokes I wasn't part of. Dates that lined up perfectly with the nights she'd told me she was working late. I felt heat rush through me, then disappear completely, replaced by something eerily calm. I didn't wake her. I didn't cry. I didn't confront her. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been, adjusted the comforter around her shoulders, and muted the TV so it wouldn't wake her. Then I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and leaned against the sink until my hands stopped shaking. I barely slept that night. My mind replayed everything I'd ignored over the past few months, the sudden privacy around her phone, the vague answers, the way she'd smile at messages and then quickly change the subject. I'd trusted her. Fully. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. Morning came like nothing was wrong. Natalie kissed my cheek, made coffee, and started talking about the car we'd just put a deposit on like my world hadn't cracked open hours earlier. I nodded. Smiled. Played my role. Somewhere inside me, a switch flipped from emotional to observant. As soon as she left for work, I called my best friend Ryan. He showed up fast, no questions asked. I told him everything, every message, every detail I could remember. He didn't interrupt. He didn't minimize it. He just listened. Then we checked what couldn't lie. Joint accounts. Statements. Dates. Restaurants I'd never been to. Ride charges at odd hours. A hotel charge from a weekend she'd claimed was a family visit. Each line confirmed what my gut already knew. This wasn't recent. This wasn't accidental. That afternoon, Natalie texted saying she'd be late again. I replied casually and set my phone face down. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I wanted the truth in full, not whatever version she decided to offer under pressure. That night, I cooked dinner like everything was normal. We ate together. She laughed. I watched her like a stranger wearing my wife's face. And that was the moment I knew, I wasn't going to react. I was going to prepare. I didn't confront Natalie the next day. Or the day after that. That surprised even me. Instead, something inside me went quiet and sharp, like my brain had switched from panic to planning. I'd spent my whole life believing that if something felt wrong, you talked it out. You trusted. You gave the other person the benefit of the doubt. But trust only works when both people are playing the same game, and Natalie wasn't. So I started watching. On the surface, I was the same husband I'd always been. I asked about her day. I listened when she complained about coworkers. I laughed at the right moments. I didn't question the late nights or the sudden smiles at her phone. If anything, I leaned in harder, playing the role so well that even I almost forgot what I knew. Inside, though, I was cataloging everything. Times. Dates. Patterns. Ryan helped me think clearly when my emotions threatened to spill over. We sat at his place one night, beers untouched on the table between us. You don't owe her drama, he said. You owe yourself clarity. That became my anchor. The next morning, while Natalie showered, I opened my laptop and logged into the account for the car deposit. We'd only finalized it a week earlier. Most of that money was mine, savings I'd built slowly, responsibly. Seeing it sitting there, tied to someone who was lying to my face, made my stomach turn. I didn't move anything yet. I just learned. That same afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a completely different bank. No shared logins. No familiar passwords. I transferred a small amount, nothing noticeable, nothing that would trigger a question. Just enough to know that when everything exploded, I wouldn't be trapped. If protecting myself made me manipulative, so be it. That week, Natalie had a company happy hour. Normally I skipped those. Corporate mixers drained me, and she'd always said it was fine if I stayed home. This time, though, I went. Brightline Solutions rented out the back of a sleek downtown bar. Everyone was polished, relaxed in that force work fun way. Natalie spotted me and smiled, a little surprised but not unhappy. That's when I met Alyssa. Natalie introduced her casually, like she was introducing someone I'd heard about 100 times. "This is Alyssa, she leads one of our major projects," she said. Alyssa shook my hand, confident grip, perfect smile. She was exactly the kind of person people described as magnetic. The kind of person who knew it. "Oh, you're Ethan," she said. "I've heard so much about you." That line hit me harder than anything I'd read on Natalie's phone. As the night went on, I watched them. Not obviously. Just enough. The inside jokes. The way Natalie leaned closer when Alyssa spoke. How they drifted toward each other even in a crowded room. Once, I stepped away to use the restroom and came back through a different corridor, only to see them standing too close, voices low, bodies angled inward like the rest of the room didn't exist. They jumped apart when someone walked by. Later, as we were leaving, I heard Alyssa say, "Your husband seems really sweet." The way she said it, soft, almost apologetic, made my jaw clench. That night, Natalie was extra affectionate. She curled up next to me, talked about furniture ideas, about road trips we should take once the car arrived. I nodded, scrolling through options. With her while my mind replayed the way she'd looked at someone else. 2 days later, I downloaded the mobile carrier app. I hated myself for it, but I needed proof I couldn't argue with later. The app showed location history for phones on our shared plan. Tuesday night. Thursday night. Same address across town. I searched it. Apartment complex. Name tied to the lease, Alyssa Moore. There it was. Clean. Undeniable. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, waiting for the pain to crest. Instead, I felt oddly steady. The uncertainty was gone. That mattered more than comfort. That evening, Natalie texted that she'd be late again. I replied, "No worries. I'll save you dinner." While she was gone, I went through our finances in detail. I found charges for wine shops, upscale restaurants, and a jewelry store from a date that landed hard in my chest. Valentine's week. She'd given me a card that year. Just a card. Friday came around again, film night, exactly 1 week after everything started. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Natalie picked another slow documentary. I barely watched it. I watched her instead. She kept checking her phone. Angling it away. Smiling faintly. She fell asleep before the credits rolled. I checked her mobile again. The old conversation was gone. Deleted. But a new one had replaced it, saved under a neutral name. The messages were unmistakable. Plans. Times. A joke about how nice it would be to have the place to themselves soon. That's when I decided. The next morning, over coffee, I casually mentioned that I might have a work conference coming up in Phoenix the following weekend. Nothing dramatic. Just a possibility. Natalie perked up instantly. She tried to hide it, but I saw it, the excitement flicker across her face before she smoothed it out. "Oh yeah," she said. "That could be good for you." "Yeah," I replied. "Probably leave Thursday night." She nodded, already elsewhere in her head. That was all the confirmation I needed. I told Ryan everything. The location tracking. The happy hour. The deleted messages. The look on her face when I mentioned being out of town. "So what's the plan?" he asked. I took a deep breath. I'm not disappearing quietly. But I'm not blowing up without control either. Over the next few days, I prepared. I drafted a letter withdrawing from the car purchase. I didn't send it yet, but it was ready. I moved more of my money, still carefully, still quietly. I started packing sentimental things and dropping them at Ryan's place a little at a time. Things Natalie wouldn't notice missing until it was too late. I changed passwords. Recovery emails. Everything. On Wednesday night, Natalie talked about maybe getting a dog once things settled down. I nodded, asked about breeds, and felt something inside me finally detach completely. Thursday morning came. She kissed me goodbye, helped carry my overnight bag to the car, told me she'd miss me. The lies came so easily to her it was almost impressive. I drove around the block, waited 20 minutes, then went straight to Ryan's loft. We set up what he jokingly called mission control. Snacks, coffee, laptops. I installed a smart door camera I'd picked up earlier that week, making sure it was positioned just right. By Friday evening, everything was ready. At 7:32 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Alyssa appeared on the screen, overnight bag in hand. Natalie opened the door and kissed her before they even stepped inside. Something in me didn't shatter like I expected. It hardened. I watched the door close behind them on Ryan's laptop screen, the camera feed steady and unforgiving. Alyssa's overnight bag swung against her leg as Natalie pulled her inside like it was the most natural thing in the world. No hesitation. No guilt. Just familiarity. That was the moment the last piece of denial burned away. Ryan glanced at me. "You okay?" I nodded, surprised to realize it was true. I wasn't okay in the way people usually mean, there was grief humming under my skin, but I was clear. Clear is steadier than okay. Clear lets you move. "Start the checklist," I said. We didn't toast or curse or spiral. We worked. I sent the withdrawal notice to Summit Auto Group first. Short. Professional. No drama. I attached the documentation showing the deposit came from my account and requested confirmation in writing. I didn't ask permission, I asserted a decision. Then I transferred the remaining balance from the joint savings to my new account, leaving enough behind that nothing would bounce and give her an excuse to claim I was sabotaging her finances. I wasn't interested in theatrics. I was interested in exits. While Ryan printed copies of statements and timestamps, I sat with my phone and changed everything else: passwords, recovery emails, two-factor authentication. I removed myself as an authorized user on the shared credit card and opened a freeze on my credit. It took time. It took focus. It felt like building a fence plank by plank while a storm raged on the other side. Around 9, the camera caught them again. They stepped onto the balcony with wine glasses, laughing. Natalie leaned against the railing, the exact spot where she and I had planned a summer grill that never happened. Alyssa said something that made Natalie tilt her head back and laugh the way she used to laugh with me. I didn't look away. I let my brain catalog it, the same way you catalog a wreck on the highway so you don't convince yourself later that it wasn't that bad. Ryan kept recording. I didn't need every second, just enough to establish truth without embellishment. By midnight, I was tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. I lay on Ryan's couch staring at the ceiling while the laptop quietly recorded movement pings in the background. At some point, the feed went still. I turned the volume down and finally slept. In the morning, I woke before my alarm. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of traffic below. I checked the feed. No movement. They were both gone. Good. Ryan drove me back to Lakeview Residences mid-morning. I knew Natalie would be at work, Fridays were always packed for her. I had a narrow window, and I intended to use it without drama. We worked fast and clean. I took only what was undeniably mine: clothes, my books, my grandfather's watch, the framed photo of my parents that lived on my desk. I left shared purchases alone. I wasn't interested in debates about who owned a couch. In the bathroom, I found Alyssa's makeup on the counter and a hair tie on the sink. I left them exactly where they were. In the kitchen, 2 wine glasses sat in the drying rack. I didn't touch them. Evidence doesn't need commentary. Before I left, I placed a slim folder on the dining table. Inside were copies of a few things, screenshots of messages, dates aligned with charges, the withdrawal notice for the car deposit. Not everything. Just enough to make it clear I wasn't guessing. On top of the folder, I left my key. I walked out without locking the door behind me. Back at Ryan's, the first email came through at 12:34 p.m. "Ethan, where are you? I just came home for lunch and your stuff is gone. What's happening?" I didn't reply. At 12:46 p.m., another email. "I see the papers you left. This isn't what you think. Please call me so I can explain." At 1:03 p.m. "I know I messed up, but we can work through this. Don't throw away 2 years over a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. The word sat on my screen like a bad joke. The messages escalated through the afternoon. Apologies turned into accusations. She asked how I could invade her privacy. She asked how I could do this without talking to her first. She asked how I could be so calm. I stayed quiet. When the emails didn't work, she started showing up, places she thought I might be. My gym. My favorite coffee spot. Ryan's building, where the doorman turned her away without calling me. She even went to my office, causing enough of a scene that my manager stepped in and told her to leave. That was when the last layer of restraint peeled off inside me, not into chaos, but into resolve. I didn't want spectacle. I wanted accountability. I created a private link to a short compilation, door camera footage showing Alyssa arriving, the balcony moment, timestamps aligning with messages. Nothing graphic. Nothing salacious. Just undeniable context. I sent it to Natalie's parents with a single line. I thought you should know why Natalie and I are separating. I'm sorry to involve you, but you deserve the truth. 10 minutes later, my phone started lighting up from numbers I didn't recognize. Natalie borrowing phones. Natalie begging. Natalie raging. How could you send that to my parents? You ruined my life. You can't just disappear after 2 years and do this to me. I blocked each number as it came in. Then I did the last thing I debated for days. I forwarded the same link to Brightline Solutions' HR inbox with a brief note stating there appeared to be a violation of company policy involving a senior project lead and a subordinate, conducted during work hours and using company resources. I included dates. No commentary. This wasn't revenge. It was disclosure. Natalie had recently leapfrogged a coworker, Marcus Hill, for a promotion after Alyssa advocated for her in meetings. Marcus had 3 kids and a sick spouse. I'd watched him congratulate Natalie with a tight smile at that happy hour. Context matters. By Friday night, the fallout was loud even from a distance. Friends called. Some supported me outright. Others hedged, saying I'd gone too far. I let their opinions pass through me like weather. They hadn't been living my life. Natalie's mother called late Saturday morning. I almost didn't answer. I'm glad I did. She wasn't angry. She was devastated. She apologized through tears for the pain her daughter had caused and thanked me for telling the truth, even though it hurt. She said their family would be having difficult conversations. I told her I was sorry it came to this and meant it. After that call, I turned my phone off for a full day. When I turned it back on, the messages were still there, stacked like plates. Natalie blaming me for HR meetings she'd been called into. Alyssa blaming me for overreacting. Friends asking what really happened. I didn't engage. I met with a therapist on Monday morning. Dr. Reed listened without interruption and said something that stuck: you didn't create the consequences. You stopped absorbing them. A week later, I ran into Natalie by accident at Juniper and Stone Cafe, the kind of place she'd always said was too hip. She looked smaller, exhausted. She asked to sit. I said yes, because I wanted the ending to be clean. She told me the affair started as flirting, then drinks, then secrets. She said she was stressed about the car, about money, about the future. She said she still loved me. When she talked about the HR investigation and her parents, she didn't sound angry, just emptied. I asked one question. If I hadn't found out, how long would it have continued? She couldn't answer. That was enough. I told her I forgave her, not to reopen anything, but to close it. Forgiveness isn't reconciliation. It's release. She cried. I paid for my coffee. I left. The weeks after were practical. I found a small studio near the water. I decorated it exactly how I wanted. I unpacked slowly. Therapy twice a week. Long walks. Fewer explanations. Alyssa transferred offices. Natalie accepted a demotion and probation at work. Marcus was reconsidered for advancement. The car we'd nearly bought went to someone else. I felt relief every time I saw one drive past. Months later, I found an old card Natalie had written me, promises about adventures. I read it once and threw it away without ceremony. I keep the recordings locked away. They served their purpose. Pain doesn't need reruns. What I carry forward instead is quieter, the knowledge that boundaries aren't cruelty, that silence can be strength, and that leaving cleanly is sometimes the most honest thing you can do. The quiet after everything broke was louder than the chaos that came before it. For the first few days after the cafe conversation, I kept expecting something else to happen, another confrontation, another wave of messages, some dramatic turn that would demand a reaction from me. Instead, life did what it always does when you finally stop feeding the fire. It kept moving. Natalie didn't reach out again right away. That, more than anything, told me the gravity of what had happened had finally settled in for her. When someone runs out of angles, silence is usually what's left. I focused on the things directly in front of me. Work first. I sat down with my manager, Karen, and told her I needed a week off. I didn't give details. I didn't need to. She looked at my face for about 2 seconds and nodded. Take what you need, she said. Your job will be here. That alone felt like oxygen. I spent those days in my new studio at Harbor East Studios, unpacking slowly, deliberately. I'd chosen the place because it was small and bright, close to the water, and completely mine. No shared closets. No memories baked into the walls. Just clean space. I bought groceries for one. Cooked simple meals. Slept when I was tired instead of when it was convenient for someone else. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. That didn't mean Natalie disappeared entirely. She tried a different approach about 10 days later. Not emails. Not calls. A handwritten letter. Ryan handed it to me one evening when he stopped by with takeout. He'd intercepted it at his place. Natalie had dropped it off there, apparently hoping proximity might soften me. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. The letter was neat, careful. Natalie's handwriting had always been precise, like she believed order could prevent chaos. She apologized again. Not just for the affair this time, but for how she'd treated me during it. The lies. The entitlement. The assumption that I'd stay no matter what. She wrote that HR had concluded their investigation. She was on probation. Alyssa had transferred out of state. Work felt hostile now, she said, full of looks and whispers. Then came the part I'd been expecting. She said she felt like I'd taken everything from her all at once. That she understood why I was hurt, but she didn't understand why I needed to destroy her life to leave. She asked if we could meet again, just once, to talk like adults without lawyers, without cameras, without an audience. I folded the letter carefully and set it on the table. Ryan watched me. You don't owe her a response. I know, I said. But I want to give myself one. That night, I wrote my reply. Short. Clear. Calm. Natalie. I didn't destroy your life. I stopped participating in a version of it that required my silence and my ignorance. I'm not meeting again. I've said everything I need to say. I hope you build something honest from here. Ethan. I mailed it the next morning. That was the last direct communication we had. After that, the consequences unfolded on their own, without my involvement. Mutual friends started choosing sides, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the quiet way people do when they realize neutrality is just avoidance. Some drifted away. Others surprised me by showing up with coffee, texts, invitations that had nothing to do with Natalie or explanations. I didn't correct rumors. I didn't defend myself. Anyone who wanted the truth could ask. Anyone who didn't wasn't my responsibility. The car deposit situation resolved cleanly. Summit Auto Group confirmed the withdrawal, minus a small administrative fee. It stung to lose the money, but every time I thought about being tied to Natalie financially any longer, the cost felt like a bargain. Natalie moved out of Lakeview Residences. I heard that through someone else. She downsized, closer to work. I didn't ask where. I didn't need to know. Therapy became a constant instead of a crisis response. Dr. Reed helped me untangle the guilt I didn't realize I'd been carrying, the belief that if I'd been more attentive, more patient, more flexible, this wouldn't have happened. He shut that down fast. Cheating isn't a communication issue, he said. It's a choice. That sentence rewired something in me. A month later, Natalie's parents reached out again. This time, not to apologize or explain, just to check in. They told me they were proud of how I'd handled everything, that they were disappointed in their daughter but committed to holding her accountable without enabling her. I thanked them and wished them well. We agreed to step back from contact. Clean lines mattered. Around that same time, I heard through the grapevine that Natalie had tried to frame the story differently at work. That she'd said I'd overreacted and handled things poorly. The narrative didn't stick. Too many facts didn't line up. Too many people had seen the timelines. Truth has weight. Even when it's quiet. One evening, while unpacking the last box in my studio, I found an old receipt folded inside a notebook. It was from our very first film night, the snacks we'd picked up on a whim, laughing in line about how overpriced popcorn was. I sat on the floor for a long time holding it. Not because I missed her. Because I missed who I was before I started explaining away things that hurt. I threw the receipt away and finished unpacking. By the time winter rolled in, my life felt settled in a way it hadn't in years. I had routines again, morning runs by the water, work days that ended without dread, weekends that didn't require emotional armor. One night, Ryan asked me if I ever regretted sending the recordings to Natalie's parents and HR. I thought about it carefully before answering. No, I said. I regret that it was necessary. But not that I told the truth. He nodded. That's the difference. The last ripple came unexpectedly. Natalie showed up at my building one afternoon. She didn't get past the lobby. The concierge called me instead. She says it's urgent, he said. I looked out the window at the water, calm and unmoved. Tell her I'm not available, I said. Understood. That was it. No final confrontation. No dramatic goodbye. No last words echoing in the rain. Just a door that stayed closed because it was supposed to. By the end of that year, the story stopped feeling like something that had happened to me and started feeling like something I'd walked through and left behind. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad most days. I was clear. And clarity, I learned, is what lets you move forward without dragging the wreckage with you. By the time the year turned, I stopped counting days since everything fell apart. That's how I knew I was finally on the other side of it. At first, I'd measured time obsessively. 1 week since I found the messages. 1 month since I walked out. 2 months since the cafe conversation. But eventually, those markers stopped matching. The story loosened its grip on my daily thoughts, and when I realized that, it scared me a little, then relieved me even more. Healing doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quietly, disguised as normalcy. I started noticing small things. How I didn't flinch anymore when my phone buzzed unexpectedly. How I no longer replayed conversations in my head trying to spot the exact moment everything went wrong. How Natalie's name, when it came up in conversation, didn't tighten my chest or spike my pulse. It just existed. Work stabilized. I was offered a leadership role on a new project, nothing flashy, just trust earned back by showing up consistently. I said yes without hesitation. There was a time when I would have worried about how a promotion might affect my relationship. Now, the only person it affected was me. Ryan joked that I'd become annoyingly grounded. I took that as a compliment. A few months later, I ran into Marcus, the coworker who'd been passed over while Natalie benefited from Alyssa's influence. We crossed paths at a networking event downtown. He looked lighter than I remembered him. He told me he'd gotten the promotion. I don't know if it had anything to do with what happened, he said carefully. It did, I replied just as carefully. And you earned it. He thanked me, not dramatically, not with awe, just sincerely. That interaction stuck with me longer than any apology ever could have. It reminded me that consequences don't only punish. Sometimes, they correct. Natalie faded into the background of my life the way distant thunder does. You know the storm passed somewhere else, but it's no longer over your head. I heard she'd transferred departments. That she'd started therapy. That she'd told people she lost herself for a while. I didn't argue with that version of events. It wasn't my job to rewrite her narrative anymore. One afternoon, nearly a year after everything ended, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. It was Natalie. She didn't ask to meet. She didn't apologize again. She didn't accuse me of anything. She just wrote, "I hope you're doing well. I wanted you to know I finally understand why you left the way you did. I didn't respect you when it mattered. I'm sorry for that. You don't need to reply." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I put my phone down and went for a walk by the water. I didn't reply, not out of bitterness, but because the message wasn't asking for anything. It didn't require my participation to be complete. Sometimes, the healthiest response is silence that isn't defensive. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized something else had changed. I trusted myself again. That might sound small, but it's everything. For a long time, I'd second-guessed my instincts. I'd told myself I was being dramatic, paranoid, insecure. I'd ignored the quiet alarms because I didn't want to disrupt the life I thought I was building. Losing that trust in myself had hurt more than losing Natalie ever did. Now it was back. And with it came a decision, one that felt less like a reaction and more like a declaration. I decided I would never again tie my future to someone who required me to shrink, to doubt my perceptions, or to stay silent to keep the peace. I decided I wouldn't ignore discomfort just because it didn't come with proof yet. I decided I would treat honesty as a requirement, not a bonus. That decision shaped everything that came next. I didn't rush into dating. I didn't need to prove anything. When I eventually did meet someone new, months later, it wasn't fireworks or drama. It was calm, transparent, easy. And the moment something felt off, I spoke up, without fear that doing so might cost me the relationship. If it did, that relationship wasn't meant to survive anyway. The last loose end tied itself quietly. I returned the remaining mail that still showed up with Natalie's name on it. I deleted the last shared photo from my cloud storage. I shredded the final document that had both our signatures on it. No ceremony. No witnesses. Just closure. Looking back now, I don't think what I did was cruel. I think it was precise. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't implode or explode. I observed, I prepared, and I removed myself from a situation that would have continued hurting me if I'd stayed polite. There's a strange power in that. People talk about walking away like it's weakness. Like it means you lost. But sometimes walking away is the first moment you stop losing. If you're listening to this and something in your life feels off, if the pieces don't line up, if your intuition keeps tapping you on the shoulder, don't ignore it just because the truth might be inconvenient. You don't need to react immediately. You don't need to burn everything down. But you do need to listen. Silence can be strategic. Distance can be merciful. And choosing yourself doesn't require permission. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor before you go, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from or what time it is for you right now. It helps more than you think, and it lets me know these stories are finding the people who need them. Thanks for staying with me until the end.